Hello, hello, hello. Lachelle Barnett here, launch and brand strategist. Listen, we are jumping in to do part two of a great conversation that we've been having over the last couple of days inside of our community, all throughout our Facebook group. So, we're going to be talking about how are you building an audience for your coaching business. And I just want to put a prerequisite here. There is a part one. You need part one before you do part two, right? So if you're on the video right now listening to us, definitely stay on so you'll get some understanding, but go back to part one. Like if you're inside of our Facebook community, you can always search and type audience and part two or part one will come up. Okay. All right. So for those of you who do not know who I am, I run a branding firm where we specialize in curriculum for coaches, right? So essentially, what we do is we show you how to package your expertise into $1 million idea. And then after we do that, we help you take that idea and build an infrastructure around it, right? A lot of coaches never get the freedom that they desire because they don't have systems in place. So we do that. So that way you can build a six-figure business that you love. And so we have a coaching side, and we have an agency side where we do a lot of done for you kind of things. And so let's jump into what it looks like to build an audience again. And I'm gonna write it here because somebody's gonna be like, I don't know what you're saying. I forgot that there was a video number one. Okay, so we always start with the warm-up question. So here's our warm-up question for today. Okay. When it comes to your learning, do you rather have books or podcasts? Okay. Are you hashtag books or hashtag podcasts or hashtag both? Right. Let me know in the comments which one of them is your preference. I'll tell you mine. So I'm actually a hashtag both. I like shorter podcasts that are like 10, 15 minutes long. I do have some that are a little longer, but I don't listen to them as often because who has an hour to listen to this entire episode? So I like books because I like to touch things and highlight, and I'm kind of a researcher and a nerd that way, but I also love podcasts. So I'm definitely a hashtag both. You let me know in the comments, are you a hashtag book, hashtag podcast, hashtag both? Okay. All right. So first things first, watch part one. Okay. I got to put it here because somebody is going to forget. Okay. All right. So here's what I really want us to talk about is when it comes to building your audience, again, after we discussed all the things that we talked about in part one, those are prerequisites, then what? Right. I've chosen my distribution channel. I know what it is that I want to focus on. Okay. So, but how do I go about building the audience? Okay. So here's what I want you to be able to see. The number one tool that any of us has to build an audience is your content. Okay. Regardless to which kind of distribution channel that you chose, it's content, all of it. Right. And I want to be clear that just because this is the number one tool does not mean you have to push content 17 times a day. It's about being strategic. Right. And understanding how to let the make the algorithm work in your favor. So just because it's your number one tool does not mean you have to be controlled by content creation. You just need to understand that it's a priority and figure out how to make it work for you. Okay. I'd rather see you do a consistent piece of content once a week than inconsistent content 2, 3 times a week. Right. We could have a whole conversation about the details of content creation. But for right now, we're just talking about, okay, this is my number one tool. All right. So we got that clear. I need content to build my audience. Okay. Let's talk about what kinds of content, right? I want to give you maybe 3 or 4 different types of content that are going to help you build your audience. But here's the key is that each one of these pieces of content does something different. Okay. Each one of them does something different. So one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, do I need all of them? Yes, you do. Like if you just do one type of content, guess what? You will lose something. Building an audience is both an art and a science. So before I write them all, let me just go through. No, I'm going to write them all because I'm in it now. So here we are. Let's go through it. So there are essentially, so first of all, there's lots of different types of content. Like, let's just be clear. It's not just these, but this is trying to keep it simple, right? Because a lot of times we don't make progress simply because we're making everything all complicated. Okay. So let's talk about these different types of content, why we need them, what they do. Okay. So let's talk about the most common one, educational, right? So educational content is like how-to content. Ooh, that turned out really big. Okay. This is all the things that you're teaching people. Okay. 3 steps to do this, how to not do this, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And what this does is that it positions you as the expert. This is the number one kind of content that you need. Right. This is like the longest sentence of my life, apparently. By far the most important type of content. Okay. But not the only type of content. If all you do is educational content, I won't say that it won't work, because educational content is very powerful, but there's a difference between powerful and magnetic, right? So if you listen to any of my content, we're a very heavy teaching style type of content, right? We do these videos a couple times a week where we teach something, right? But most of the content inside of it, not most of the content, some of the content inside of our Facebook group falls into these other categories, right? And those are the ones that get 100 likes and 200 likes and 50 likes and 12 likes and whatever, it's because has to be a balance, okay? So that's the first kind of content, right, that I want you to be able to focus on and get good at, okay? The second piece of content is engaging content, okay? And the only thing this does is gets people to raise their hand. Wait, I'm going to write it different because I did it backwards. Let me just keep with the same flow that I just started. So what this is, engaging content is basically questions or something that requires people to engage, right? So CTAs. So CTAs are call to actions. It's like, hey, drop a number one if this, if that, then this, right? All you're doing is asking questions to get people to comment, or you're doing some kind of call to action to get people to comment. So the reason, right, the purpose, like this is our whole purpose column here. The purpose of this is, number one, you get people to raise their hand. Okay, so let's say you have a Facebook group and your Facebook group has 400 people in the group, okay? And all 400 of those people are not ready to buy what it is that you have to offer, but maybe 75 of them are. Well, how do you get those 75 to rise to the top? Engagement, like you do some kind of engaging kind of content, right? These other ones will work too, right? They all will create some level of engagement, but you need this one specifically. So not only does it get people to raise their hand, well, that's the main purpose. I don't want to go too deep into it because then our video will turn into a 45-minute video. That's not the goal. Okay. So, but what I want you to see is that if you only do engaging content, people do not see you as an expert, and it does not actually, your content does not convert, right? Like the whole purpose of your content is to create buyers, right? People who actually want what you have, for you to be out here solving people's problems, right? So if you just, people write in different Facebook groups and they ask questions, like if that's all you see people doing, this is just engagement, okay? Your sales will be impacted if you don't have the other types of content. All right, so let's do enticing. So enticing content is story-based, okay? Why? Because story-based content allows you to, so number one, it's how we take in information and retain it, right? When someone tells you a story, you're more likely to remember the information that they shared, right? Versus just facts and figures. So part of it is how it computes in your brain and how it goes past the conscious, right? It's like people are tapped in emotionally. Let me just type this. So it evokes emotion. Okay. And it pushes people. It also helps with retention. So just retaining the content. right? But essentially, it's moving people back past the conscious. Because if you know anything about sales, listen, I may spell it wrong. Remember what I said, don't judge me, judge your mama, okay? Sales, people make decisions on a subconscious level, okay? So you need this type of content as well. The last type of content that's important, and this is actually one of my faves, is edgy content. So edgy content is just basically where you're saying things that your ideal client, let me say it different so I don't have this long sentence that I have to write out because I'm uninterested in that. You're basically saying what they're saying to themselves, but they don't tell other people, right? So think about the conversations that you have with your biz bestie, right? Those are things that you probably don't put on social media, some of those things, right? You're talking about the struggle and the ups and the downs, all of the things, right? So what are people already saying to themselves? That's the key, right? And what this does is a couple of things. Number one, it creates a level of urgency, right? So part of what we all have to do in our marketing is create urgency, right? The reason is because people have these problems, but they're not quick to solve them. Think about the problems that you have right now with your business. Okay. So let's say you've been trying to figure out your niche for 3 months, or let's say you've been stuck at the same income level for 6 months, whatever. Like the problems have been there for an extended period of time, but we need to create urgency within our marketing so that people actually solve the problems. They sign up for our offers. Okay, so saying what people are saying in their mind creates urgency, but it also positions you as the expert. Why? Because it's like, oh, she must really know what she's talking about because she's saying what I just told myself yesterday. So one of the ones, so you got to think about who your ideal client is and what are the things that they're saying to themselves. So for example, my audience is spiritual and trying to build a coaching business, right? And so one of the things that I know that they say to themselves is about quoting the scripture of your gift is designed to make room for you, right? But in real life, their gift is not making room for them, right? They're still stuck. They're still struggling in one way or another within their coaching business or within their 9 to 5. And so is your gift really making room for you, even though you believe that's what it's supposed to do? So if I made a post just around that, it would tap into the values of my audience and they would be like, she right, I need to get myself together, right? So I wanted to jump on and give you these 4 different types of content specifically because content is the number one tool that you're going to use to build your audience. Now, let me be clear. I'm going to put this last thing in black. There are other steps to building an audience, but these videos are designed to be short, 10, 15 minutes max. So that way you can spend more time implementing and less time consuming information. So these are not all the steps. This is just part 2 of the part 1 that we already went over. Okay. Here's what I'm going to say is a big reminder that I find is a problem for people. Before you can go off and build an audience, create all this content, build a distribution channel, part of what I see is that you need to make sure that you have the right audience. One of the biggest problems that people have when they're building their coaching business is they pick the wrong audience. They pick people who cannot pay them, or they pick people who have the problem that they solve, but they're not aware of it. They're not actively trying to solve that problem, right? So you can't want something for someone, right? So one of the things that we talked a lot about in therapy when I was, actively working as a therapist is I'm not going to work harder than you're going to work for your own life, right? And people have to want what it is that you have to offer. Now, I will say that you can help people want what you have to offer, right? You do that through some of your content. But part of what's key that I think is it's worth mentioning, because somebody's going to say, oh, I've been doing this content, it's not working. Well, guess what? You picked an audience that could never pay you anyway, right? You have what we call a nonprofit mindset versus a for-profit mindset, right? And I get it. We've all been there, right? Wanting to serve a group of people who cannot serve themselves. But let's be clear, if a person does not have the ability to pay you themselves, then you need to build a nonprofit business. That is not a coaching business. Okay. So I just thought that was worth mentioning because it is definitely a prerequisite. Okay. If you have questions, drop them below. Happy to answer them. As you know, tag a friend, business bestie, a boo, somebody else who's struggling to build their audience, and share the video. Y'all have a good night.